Commander Lee Daeho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked at the readings on his scanner. The asteroid field around Kepler 442b was supposed to be empty, but something was wrong. His mining ship had picked up metal signatures that shouldn't be there. "Sir, you need to see this," called Park Ji-woo from the pilot's seat. His voice was tight with worry. Daeho moved to the front window and felt his stomach drop. Floating among the rocks was a ship unlike anything he had ever seen. It was black as space itself, with sharp edges and strange symbols carved into its hull. But what made his blood run cold was the design. He recognized it from coalition military briefings. "That's a Vextar vessel," Ji-woo whispered. "The Vextar were the nightmare of the galaxy. These creatures were born killers, raised from birth to hunt and destroy. Their empire had been at war with the coalition for over 50 years. Every species in known space feared them. They showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and left nothing but death in their wake." "It looks damaged," Daeho said, studying the ship carefully. Large holes had been torn in its side, and one wing was completely gone. "Scan for life signs." "Sir, regulations say we should report this immediately and stay away," Ji-woo said. "Vextar ships could have traps or—" "Just scan it," Daeho ordered. Tape. Scanner hummed for several minutes. When it finished, Ji-woo looked confused. "I'm reading one life sign, but it's very weak. And, sir, it's small. Much smaller than an adult Vextar." Daeho stared at the broken ship. Something didn't feel right about this whole situation. Vextar never traveled alone, and they never left their own behind. Their military code demanded that they fight to the death rather than retreat. "Take us closer," he said. "Sir, I really think we should—" "That's an order, Ji-woo." The mining ship moved slowly toward the wreckage. As they got closer, Daeho could see that the damage was severe. Whatever had attacked this ship had wanted to make sure nothing survived. Burn marks covered the hull and debris floated all around it. They found a docking port that was still intact. Daeho put on his spacesuit and checked his weapon, though. He hoped he wouldn't need it. Ji-woo suited up too, despite his obvious fear. "Stay behind me," Daeho told him as they entered the alien ship. The inside of the Vextar vessel was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting strange shadows on the walls. The air was thin but breathable. Everything was built for creatures much larger than humans. The doorways were twice as tall as they needed to be, and the corridors were wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side. They found bodies in the first room they entered. Adult. Vextar were just as terrifying in death as they were in life. Each one was over 7 feet tall, covered in thick black scales, with claws that could tear through metal. Their faces were like nightmares, all teeth and angry eyes. "They fought something," Ji-woo observed, looking at the blast marks on the walls. "Or someone," Daeho replied. He had seen enough battlefields to recognize the signs. This hadn't been an accident or a mechanical failure. Someone had boarded this ship and killed everyone on it. They moved deeper into the vessel, following the life sign readings. The weak signal was coming from what looked like living quarters at the back of the ship. As they got closer, Daeho began to hear something that made him stop in his tracks. It was crying. Not the roar or snarl he would expect from a Vextar, but the soft, broken sound of something very young and very scared. "Sir," Ji-woo said quietly, "maybe we should go back." But Daeho was already moving toward the sound. He opened the door to the final room and stepped inside. The room was small compared to the rest of the ship, with what looked like sleeping areas built into the walls. In the far corner, huddled under some kind of blanket, was the source of the crying. It was a Vextar cub. Daeho had never seen anything like it. All the intelligence reports said that Vextar young were just smaller versions of the adults. Dangerous and aggressive from birth. But this creature was no bigger than a house cat. Its scales were soft and gray instead of the hard black armor of the adults. When it looked up at him with large, frightened eyes, it didn't look like a monster at all. It looked like a lost child. "Sir, we need to leave now," Jiwoo said from the doorway. "Coalition protocol is clear. All Vextar are to be eliminated on sight, regardless of age." Daeho knew the rules. He had been briefed on them just like every other Coalition officer. The Vextar were too dangerous to be allowed to live, even their children. It was harsh, but it was the law. The cub made another soft crying sound and tried to crawl further into the corner. It was clearly injured. Daeho could see dried blood on its small claws, and one of its legs wasn't moving right. "Sir," Jiwoo said again, this time reaching for his weapon. "No," Daeho said quietly. "Sir, I said no." Daeho took a step toward the cub. It flinched, but didn't try to attack. If anything, it seemed to make itself smaller, as if it was trying to disappear. "Commander, this is a direct violation of—" "I know what it is," Daeho snapped. Then he took a deep breath and spoke more calmly. "I know what the regulations say. But look at it, Jiwoo. Really look at it." The cub was shivering now, whether from cold or fear, Daeho couldn't tell. Its eyes never left his face, but there was no hatred in them, no desire to kill, just terror and confusion and pain. Daeho had been a soldier before he became a mining supervisor. He had seen death and caused it when necessary, but he had also learned to recognize when something was helpless and afraid. Slowly, carefully, he reached out his hand toward the cub. "Sir, don't—" The cub looked at his hand for a long moment, then slowly reached out with one tiny claw to touch his glove. The touch was gentle, almost curious. "No one gets left behind," Daeho said softly. "Not even you, little one." He carefully wrapped the cub in his jacket and picked it up. It was lighter than he expected, and it curled against his chest like it was seeking warmth. "Sir, this is going to cause problems," Jiwoo said as they walked back toward their ship. "I know," Daeho replied, looking down at the small creature in his arms. "But some things are more important than following orders." As their ship pulled away from the wreckage, Daeho made a decision that would change everything. He was going to save this child, no matter what it cost him. He had no idea that his choice would echo across the stars. 2 weeks had passed since Daeho brought the Vextar cub back to the mining station. He had named it Beol, which meant star in Korean, because he found it floating alone in space like a lost star looking for home. Dr. Kim So-ra was not happy about the situation. "This is insane," she said for the 100th time as she checked Beol's healing leg. "Do you have any idea what you've done? If the Coalition finds out—" "They won't," Daeho said firmly. "Everyone on this station has agreed to keep quiet." So-ra looked at him like he had lost his mind. "You can't hide a Vextar forever, Daeho. These creatures grow fast. In a few months, it will be big enough to tear all of us apart." But as she spoke, Beol made a soft chirping sound and gently nuzzled her hand. The cub had learned that this human helped with the pain in its leg, and it was trying to say thank you in the only way it knew how. So-ra's expression softened despite herself. "I hate when it does that," she muttered. Over the past 2 weeks, Beol had surprised everyone on the station. Instead of the savage killer they expected, the cub was curious and gentle. It followed Daeho everywhere, like a baby duck following its mother. When Daeho worked at his desk, Beol would curl up on a blanket nearby and watch everything he did with bright, intelligent eyes. The cub was learning fast. It had already figured out how to open doors by watching the humans do it. It knew which areas of the station were off-limits and never went there without permission. Most surprising of all, it was starting to understand human speech. "Beol, come here," Daeho would say, and the cub would run over immediately. "Good morning, little star," So-ra would greet it, and Beol would make happy chirping sounds in response. Engineer Choi Min-ho had been the most frightened at first. He had a 10-year-old daughter named Yuna living on the station, and the thought of a predator near his child terrified him. But everything changed when Yuna met Biol. "Papa, it's just a baby," she had said when Minho tried to keep her away. "Look at its eyes. It's scared." Yuna had no fear at all. She sat down on the floor and held out her hand, just like she would with any frightened animal. Biol approached slowly and sniffed her fingers, then sat down beside her. "See?" Yuna said, with a smile. "It likes me." From that day on, Yuna and Biol were best friends. She taught the cub human games like hide-and-seek and catch. Biol was surprisingly good at both games, showing intelligence and problem-solving skills that amazed the adults. "Watch this," Yuna said one day to her father. She held up a small ball. "Biol, fetch!" She threw the ball down the corridor. Biol ran after it, but instead of bringing it straight back, the cub stopped at a junction in the hallway. It looked left, then right, then picked up the ball and took a different route back to Yuna, one that was shorter and faster. "It's thinking," Minho said in amazement. "It's actually solving problems." Sora was taking notes on everything Biol did. As the station's xenobiologist, she knew this was the discovery of a lifetime. No one had ever studied a young Vextar before. "Look at this," she told Deho one evening, showing him her research. "Vexitar cubs are not born aggressive. The aggression is learned behavior. This little one is showing all the signs of a highly social, cooperative species." "What does that mean?" Deho asked. "It means everything we thought we knew about the E." "Vextar is wrong," Sora said. "They're not natural killers. They're made into killers." As if hearing its name, Biol looked up from where it was playing with Yuna. The cub had grown noticeably in just 2 weeks. It was now the size of a small dog, and its gray scales were starting to develop a darker pattern. But its eyes remained the same, bright, curious, and kind. "Deho," Biol said suddenly. Everyone in the room froze. It was the first time the cub had tried to speak a human word. "Did it just—" Minho started. "Deho," Biol said again, more clearly this time. It walked over to its adoptive father and looked up at him expectantly. Deho knelt down and gently scratched behind Biol's head ridges, the way he had learned the cub liked. "That's right, little star. I'm Deho." "Good," Biol said, and everyone gasped. Sora was writing frantically in her notes. "Incredible. It's not just mimicking sounds, it's understanding meaning. It knows that good means something positive." Over the following days, Biol's vocabulary expanded rapidly. It learned the names of everyone on the station. It learned words like hungry, tired, happy, and hurt. Most importantly, it learned the word family. Family, Biol would say when all the humans were gathered together for meals. Yuna family, Deho family, Sora family. The cub understood that these humans belonged together, and it wanted to belong too, but their peaceful life couldn't last forever. 3 months after Biol's arrival, trouble came to the station. "Commander," Jiwoo's voice crackled over the intercom one morning. "We have incoming ships. Coalition Inspection Team, led by Inspector General Nam Hyun-woo." Deho felt his blood turn cold. Nam was known for his strict interpretation of regulations. If he found Biol, there would be no mercy. "How long do we have?" Deho asked. 20 minutes, maybe less." Deho looked around at his crew, his family. They all knew what this meant. Sora was already packing up her research. Minho was trying to explain to Yuna why Biol had to hide. The little girl was crying, and Biol was nuzzling her face, trying to comfort her. "It'll be okay," Deho told them, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. "We'll hide Biol in the unused storage. Bay, the inspection won't take long." But as they prepared to move the cub, an alarm started blaring throughout the station. One of the mining machines had malfunctioned, and its massive drill arm was swinging wildly out of control. Yuna, who had been standing too close, stumbled backward toward the dangerous machinery. Without hesitation, Biol leaped forward. The cub, now grown to the size of a large wolf, knocked Yuna safely out of the way and took the blow from the drill arm itself. The machine finally stopped, but Biol was badly hurt. The cub lay on the ground, breathing heavily, but its eyes were fixed on Yuna to make sure she was safe. "Biol!" Yuna cried, running to her friend. "Family," Biol whispered weakly. "Protect family." At that moment, Inspector General Nam Hyun-woo walked into the bay with his security team. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the scene before him, a Vextar, the most feared predator in the galaxy, lying injured on the ground while a human child cried over it. And instead of trying to attack, the creature was gently licking the child's tears away. "Commander Lee," Nam said slowly, "I think you have some explaining to do." Daeho stood up straight and looked the Inspector General in the eyes. "Yes, sir, I believe I do." But as he prepared to face the consequences of his actions, he looked down at Biol and Yuna, and he knew he would make the same choice again. Some things were more important than regulations. Some things were worth fighting for. Inspector General Nam Hyun-woo stared at the scene before him. In all his years of service with the Coalition, he had never seen anything like this. A Vextar, wounded and vulnerable, being comforted by a human child. Every military manual said this was impossible. "Sir," Sergeant Major Kang Junseo whispered, his hand moving toward his weapon. "Orders?" Nam held up a hand to stop him. Something about this situation was very wrong, but not in the way he had expected. Biol slowly lifted its head and looked at the new humans. The cub was clearly in pain from the machinery accident, but instead of snarling or showing aggression, it did something that made Nam question everything he thought he knew. Biol bowed. It was a perfect Korean-style bow, the kind that showed respect and greeting. The cub held the position for several seconds, then slowly straightened up. "Hello," Biol said in careful, clear Korean. "You are new family?" Nam felt his mouth drop open. Behind him, his security team was making confused noises. This wasn't just a Vextar speaking human language, it was showing human manners. "This is Biol," little Yuna said, wiping tears from her eyes. "He saved me from the machine. He's not scary. He's my friend." "Yuna safe," Biol said, gently touching the girl's arm with one clawed finger. "Important. Family important." Dr. Sora stepped forward, her hands full of research tablets. "Inspector General, I know this looks impossible, but I can explain. This cub has been with us for 3 months. It's not what we expected at all." "What we expected," Nam said slowly, "was a killing machine. What I'm seeing is—" He paused, searching for words. "What exactly am I seeing, Doctor?" Sora activated her tablets and showed him charts and videos. "This is 3 months of behavioral data. Biol shows no aggressive tendencies. It demonstrates empathy, problem-solving skills, social bonding, and protective instincts toward its adopted family group." "Family," Biol repeated, looking around at all the humans. "Daeho family, Yuna family, Sora family, Minho family, new humans. Family. 2? The cub slowly approached Nam, moving carefully because of its injury. When it reached him, it held out one claw in what was clearly meant to be a handshake. "Hello, new family," Biol said politely. "I am Biol." Nam looked down at the offered claw. Every instinct told him to step back to call for weapons, but the creature in front of him was obviously young, obviously hurt, and obviously trying to be friendly. Slowly, he reached out and shook the offered claw. "Hello, Biol," he said. "I'm Nam." Biol's eyes brightened. "Nam. Good name. Nam is leader? Like Daeho?" Something like that, Nam replied, still trying to process what was happening. Commander Deho stepped forward. Sir, I know I've violated regulations. I'm prepared to face the consequences. But before you make any decisions, please let Dr. Sora show you her research. Nam nodded slowly. I think I'd like to see that. For the next hour, Sora presented her findings. She showed videos of Biol learning human customs, playing with Yuna, helping with simple tasks around the station. She explained her theory about Vextar social development. Based on my observations, Sora concluded, Vextar are not born aggressive. They become aggressive because their society teaches them to be. Biol was abandoned as a weak cub, probably because it was smaller and gentler than others. But raised with love and kindness, it's developed into a cooperative, empathetic being. That's a revolutionary theory, Nam said. If you're right, it changes everything we know about the Vextar. It's not just theory anymore, Deho said. It's proof. Biol is proof. As if summoned by its name, Biol approached with something in its claws. It was one of Yuna's coloring books, open to a page the cub had been working on. The picture showed stick figures holding hands, 2 adults, 1 child, and 1 small creature with 4 legs. Family picture, Biol said proudly, showing it to Nam. Deho Yuna Biol, happy family. Nam studied the simple drawing. It was crude, drawn with claws that weren't meant for such delicate work, but the meaning was clear. This creature saw itself as part of a human family. Sir, Sergeant Kang said quietly, my orders are to eliminate any Vextar on sight, but... What, Sergeant? Kang looked at Biol, who was now helping Yuna clean up the colored pencils scattered by the earlier accident. Sir, that's not a monster. That's someone's child. Nam made a decision that would change his life. Dr. Sora, I'm going to need copies of all your research. Commander Deho, you're coming with me to Coalition Command. And, he looked at Biol. We're bringing the cub too. No. Yuna ran to Biol and hugged the cub tightly. You can't take him away. He belongs here. Yuna, Biol said gently, is okay. Trust Nam. Trust Deho. Family will be safe. The cub's calm acceptance of the situation surprised everyone. It understood that something important was happening, and it was willing to go along to protect its human family. I'll take full responsibility, Deho said. Whatever happens, this is my choice. No, Nam replied. Whatever happens next is bigger than any one person's choice. This is about the future of 2 species. As they prepared to leave the mining station, word of the situation had already begun to spread. Someone had recorded the interaction between Nam and Biol, and the footage was making its way through coalition networks. A Vextar bowing to a human. A Vextar saving a human child. A Vextar calling humans family. The galaxy was about to learn that everything they thought they knew was wrong. On the transport ship to Coalition Command, Biol sat quietly beside Deho, holding his hand with one claw while using the other to draw in Yuna's coloring book. The cub had insisted on bringing it along. Are you scared? Deho asked quietly. Biol considered the question seriously. Little scared, it admitted. But Deho here, family here, scared okay when family here. Nam, who was sitting across from them, shook his head in amazement. 3 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be having a conversation with a Vextar about feelings, I'd have recommended them for psychological evaluation. Vextar have feelings, Biol said matter-of-factly. Just nobody asked before, nobody cares before. Humans care, humans ask. Makes difference. Yes, Nam said quietly. I'm beginning to see that it does. As their ship approached Coalition Command, Nam knew that the most important trial in galactic history was about to begin. Not just the trial of Commander Deho for violating regulations, but a trial of everything the Coalition believed about their enemies. and sitting beside him was a young Vextar who might just prove that the word enemy didn't have to mean forever. "Family," Biol said, looking out the window at the approaching space station. "New family soon?" "Maybe," Nam said. "Maybe the biggest family you can imagine." Biol smiled, an expression that should have been terrifying on a Vextar face, but somehow looked perfectly natural. "Good," the cub said. "More family always good." The courtroom on Coalition Command Station was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to witness what many were calling the trial of the century. Commander Daeho sat at the defendant's table, while Biol was held in a special research facility 3 levels below. The separation was hard on both of them. The defendant stands accused of harboring an enemy combatant, violation of coalition protocols, and endangering civilian lives, announced Prosecutor Major General Wan Tae-kyung. "These are serious charges that strike at the heart of our security." Defense. Attorney Colonel Yu Da-bin stood to respond. "Your Honor, we're not here to defend the breaking of rules. We're here to question whether those rules still make sense when faced with new evidence." The footage from the mining station had been playing on news networks across Coalition space for weeks. Public opinion was deeply divided. Some called Daeho a hero who proved that peace was possible. Others called him a traitor who put everyone at risk. Admiral Song Yoon-ji, serving as the presiding judge, called for order. "This court will examine the facts, not public opinion. Prosecutor Wan, present your case." Wan stood up, his uniform perfect and his face stern. "Your Honor, the law is clear. All Vextar are to be eliminated on sight. Commander Daeho knowingly violated this directive and put his entire crew in danger. The fact that nothing bad happened doesn't change the fact that he broke the law. The law exists to protect us," one continued. "The Vextar have killed millions of Coalition citizens. They have destroyed entire colonies. We cannot allow sentiment to override security." He showed holographic displays of Vextar attacks, of burning cities and dead soldiers. The images were horrific, and several people in the courtroom looked away. "This is what Vextar do," Wan said. "This is what they have always done. One cub raised by humans doesn't change 50 years of war." When it was her turn, Colonel Yu presented a very different case. "Your Honor, I don't dispute the history of violence between our species. But Dr. So-Ra's research suggests that this violence isn't inevitable. It's learned behavior." She activated her own holographic display, showing clips of Biol playing with Yuna, helping around the station, learning to read simple words. "This is what a Vextar looks like when raised with love instead of hatred." The defendant didn't just save a life. He proved that our entire understanding of the enemy was wrong. The testimony went on for hours. Dr. So-Ra explained her behavioral research. Engineer Minho described how Biol had saved his daughter. Inspector General Nam testified about his own changed perspective. But the most important moment came when Prosecutor Wan made a critical mistake. "Your Honor, I request permission to bring the creature into the courtroom. I want to show this court what we're really dealing with." Admiral Song looked concerned. "Prosecutor, are you sure that's wise? Security protocols will be in place," one assured her. "I want everyone to see a Vextar for what it really is." 20 minutes later, Biol was brought into the courtroom in restraints. The cub had grown considerably during the weeks of trial preparation. It now stood nearly 4 feet tall, with developing scale armor and visible claws. To anyone who didn't know better, it looked like a young but dangerous predator. The courtroom fell silent as Biol was led to the center of the room. Many people leaned back in their seats, fear clear on their faces. "You see," one said triumphantly, "even young, this creature is clearly a threat. Those claws could—" He stopped talking because Biol had spotted Daeho in the defendant's chair. The cub's entire demeanor changed instantly. Its eyes lit up with joy, and it made soft, happy chirping sounds. "Daeho!" Biol called out, pulling against its restraints. Daeho, you okay? Biol missed you. The guards holding the restraints looked confused as the dangerous predator began trying to reach its adoptive father. There was no aggression in Biol's movements, only the desperate desire of a child trying to reach a parent. Family. Biol said, looking around the courtroom. Where Yuna? Where Sora? Miss Family. Prosecutor Wan tried to regain control. As you can see, the creature shows clear territorial behavior toward the defendant. This proves Daeho sad? Biol interrupted, noticing his father's expression. Why Daeho in cage? Biol fix. Before anyone could stop it, Biol did something that stunned everyone in the courtroom. The cub sat down quietly and began removing its own restraints. With careful precision, it unlocked each binding without damaging them. Biol smart, the cub explained to the shocked guards. Watch humans for weeks. Learn how locks work. But instead of running or attacking, Biol carefully placed the restraints on the floor and walked slowly toward Daeho. When security moved to stop it, the cub held up its claws in a gesture of peace. Please, Biol said politely. Just want hug, family. Promise no hurt. Promise be good. The courtroom was completely silent. Here was a creature that could have escaped at any time, but had chosen to stay. A creature that could easily harm the humans around it, but was asking permission for a hug. Admiral Song made a decision. Let it approach. Biol walked carefully to Daeho and gently placed its head against his shoulder. Daeho wrapped his arms around the cub, and for a moment, the courtroom saw exactly what they were, a father and child who had been separated and were now reunited. Miss you, Biol whispered. Scared without family. I missed you too, little star, Daeho replied, his voice thick with emotion. Prosecutor Wan was not giving up. Your Honor, this display of emotion doesn't change the fact that this creature is dangerous. I'd like to test its reactions under stress. He signaled to his aide, who activated a loud alarm sound. The noise was harsh and sudden, designed to provoke an aggressive response. Biol flinched at the sound, then looked around the courtroom with concern. Instead of attacking, the cub moved to position itself between the noise and Daeho, spreading its arms protectively. Loud noise hurt family ears, Biol said, still maintaining its protective stance. Please stop. Biol asked nice. When the alarm continued, Biol did something no one expected. The cub began to sing. It was a simple melody, one that Yuna had taught it back on the mining station. Biol's voice was different from a human's, deeper and with harmonic overtones, but the tune was clearly recognizable as a lullaby. The singing calmed everyone in the room. Even the harsh alarm seemed less threatening with Biol's gentle melody covering it. Yuna teach song, Biol explained when the alarm finally stopped. Says music makes scary things less scary. Work for humans, work for Vextar too. Dr. An Sung-ho, the coalition's leading xenopsychologist, stood up from the observer section. Your Honor, I've been studying this creature for weeks through recordings and video calls. I've never seen emotional intelligence like this in any species. Its responses are consistently pro-social, protective, and empathetic. If this is what Vextar can become when raised with love, we need to completely reconsider our approach to this conflict. Prosecutor Wan made one last attempt. The creature may seem harmless now, but what happens when it reaches full size? When its predator instincts fully develop? Biol turned to look at him directly. Sir, ask good question, the cub said respectfully. Biol think about this too. Biol get bigger, stronger, but Biol choose what do with strong. Choose protect, family, not hurt family. Choose love, not hate. The cub paused, thinking carefully about its words. Human warriors strong too, but good humans choose protect, not hurt. Biol want be good Vextar. Want protect all families, not just Biol family. In that moment, the courtroom understood what they were witnessing. This wasn't just about one cub and one human. This was about the possibility that an entire species might be capable of choosing love over violence, if given the chance. Admiral Song called for recess, but everyone knew the real trial was already over. The evidence wasn't in books or recordings. It was standing in the center of the room, offering hope where there had only been fear. As the courtroom emptied, Biol remained with Dae-ho, finally at peace after weeks of separation. "Dae-ho," the cub said quietly, "did Biol do good? Help family?" "You did perfect, little star," Dae-ho replied. "You helped more than just our family today. You might have helped the whole galaxy." Biol considered this seriously. "Good, it said finally. "Galaxy need more family, more love, less scared." And in that simple statement, a young Vextar had summarized what might become the foundation for peace between two species that had known only war. 3 days after the trial ended with Dae-ho's full acquittal and Biol's recognition as a sentient being with rights, something impossible happened. The Vextar Empire sent a message. Admiral Song stood in the Coalition Command Center, staring at the communication screen in disbelief. In 50 years of war, the Vextar had never attempted peaceful contact. They communicated only through violence. "You're certain this is genuine?" she asked the communications officer. "Yes, ma'am. The signal is coming from the Vextar capital ship Domination's Edge. It's their flagship." "What do they want?" "They're requesting a ceasefire and diplomatic talks. They specifically mentioned the cub, ma'am." Admiral Song felt a chill run down her spine. Somehow, word of Biol had reached the Vextar Empire. She could only imagine how they had reacted to learning that one of their young was living peacefully with humans. "Set up a secure channel," she ordered. "I want to hear this myself." The main screen activated, showing the bridge of a Vextar warship. The figure that appeared was massive, even by Vextar standards. Its black scales seemed to absorb light, and scars covered its face and arms. When it spoke, its voice was deep and commanding. "I am Supreme War Commander Kesseral of the Vextar Empire. I speak for the High Council. This is Admiral Song of the Coalition Defense Force. You requested communication." "Yes." Kesseral's amber eyes seemed to stare directly through the screen. "We have seen recordings of one of our young living among your kind. This troubles us." Song felt her heart sink. They had come to reclaim Biol, probably to punish the cub for the shame it had brought to their species. "The cub is under Coalition protection," she said firmly. "It has committed no crimes." Crimes. Kesseral's scarred face showed what might have been confusion. "You misunderstand, human. We have not come to punish the young one. We have come because of what we have learned from watching it." The war commander paused, and Song could see something in its expression that she had never expected to see on a Vextar face. Uncertainty. "For generations, we have believed that strength comes only from abandoning the weak. Cubs who cannot match their siblings in combat are cast out to die. It is our way. It has always been our way." Kesseral's voice grew quieter. "But we have watched your recordings. We have seen our abandoned young showing courage in protecting your offspring. We have seen it display intelligence and loyalty. Most disturbing of all, we have seen it choose mercy over violence." "Is that disturbing to you?" Song asked carefully. "It should be. But—" The great warrior seemed to struggle with the words. "The young one's choice saved an innocent life. In our culture, protecting the helpless is the highest honor. Yet we abandoned this one because we thought it was weak." Song began to understand. "You're questioning your own traditions. The recordings have spread throughout our empire. Many of our warriors are asking difficult questions. If this abandoned cub could show such honor, how many others have we wrongly cast aside? How much strength have we wasted in the name of maintaining strength? Admiral Song made a quick decision. Would you like to meet the cub? And the human. Who saved it? Kesserall was quiet for a long moment. You would allow this? On neutral ground. Harmony Point Station. No weapons, small escort only. This is acceptable. But I must warn you, human. I am not the only one who wishes to see the young one. There are others who view its survival as a sign of weakness in our species. They would prefer to eliminate the problem. Then we'll make... Sure they don't get the chance, Song replied. 2 weeks later, Daeho found himself on Harmony Point Station with Biol, preparing for the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. The cub had grown even more during their time at Coalition Command. It now stood nearly 5 feet tall, and its scales had darkened to a deep gray. But its eyes remained kind and curious. Nervous? Daeho asked, as they waited in the diplomatic lounge. Little bit, Biol admitted. Meeting birth people. Don't know what they want. Ambassador Lee Hya-jin, the coalition's lead diplomat, joined them. Remember, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You're a coalition citizen now. They have no claim on you. Understand, Biol said. But maybe they just want talk, like we want talk? The doors to the lounge opened, and Kesserall entered with 2 guards. The war commander was even more imposing in person, nearly 8 feet tall and radiating an aura of barely controlled power. The guards flanked the doorway but came no closer. Kesserall stopped when it saw Biol, and its amber eyes widened. For a long moment, neither Vexitar moved. You have grown, Kesserall said finally, its voice surprisingly gentle. Yes, Biol replied simply. Humans feed well. Teach well. Love well. Love. Kesserall repeated the word like it was foreign. Our language has no word for this concept. Then learn new word, Biol said. Love is choosing to protect someone even when it's hard, is caring more about their happiness than your own, is being family even when not born family. Kesserall took a step closer, and Daeho tensed. But the war commander's movements were slow and careful. May I examine you to see if you are truly unharmed? Biol looked at Daeho, who nodded. The cub approached the massive warrior without fear. Kesserall gently touched Biol's face with one claw, checking for scars or signs of mistreatment. What the war commander found instead was a young Vextar that was healthy, confident, and clearly well cared for. They have been kind to you, Kesserall observed. More than kind. They save Biol, make Biol family, teach Biol what means to belong. Something in Kesserall's expression shifted. Belong. Yes. I remember wanting to belong once when I was very young. You were young? Biol asked with curiosity. Hard to imagine. A sound escaped from Kesserall that might have been laughter. I was not always this size. I was once small like you. I was also once afraid. What you afraid of? Being abandoned. Being found weak. Being alone. Kesserall's voice grew softer. The same fears you must have felt. Yes, Biol said. But humans teach Biol that being afraid okay. Everyone afraid. Sometimes, what matters is what you do when afraid. And what did you do? Chose to trust, chose to love, chose to protect others even when scared. Biol paused. What you do when afraid? Kesserall was quiet for a long time. When the war commander spoke again, its voice was barely above a whisper. I chose to become strong enough that no one could abandon me again. But in doing so, I became someone who abandoned others. The great warrior looked directly at Biol. I have something to tell you, young one. Something I have never told anyone. Biol waited patiently. You are not just any abandoned cub. You are my offspring. I am the one who cast you out for being too small, too gentle. I am the one who decided you were weak." The room fell silent. Ambassador Hyajin gasped. Deho instinctively moved closer to Biol, but Biol's reaction surprised everyone. The young Vexitar looked at Kesseral with sadness, but not anger. "You were scared too," Biol said simply. "Scared that loving me make you weak, scared that keeping me put others in danger." "How do you know this?" "Because his same fear Deho had. When he found me, he scared too. But he choose different. He choose love over fear." Kesseral turned to look at Deho. "You were afraid?" "Terrified," Deho admitted. "I knew I was breaking every rule, risking my career, endangering my crew. But I looked at this scared, hurt child, and I couldn't walk away. Even knowing it might cost you everything, especially knowing that. Some things are worth the risk." Kesseral stared at the human for a long moment, then turned back to Biol. "I believed I had failed you, but perhaps I failed only in letting you go." "Not fail," Biol said, approaching its birth parent. "You give Biol to humans who could love better than you knew how. Maybe that not failure, maybe that sacrifice." The great war commander's composure finally broke. Tears ran down its scarred face as it knelt down to Biol's level. "Can you forgive an old warrior who thought strength was more important than love?" Biol gently touched Kesseral's face, just as the war commander had done earlier. "Already forgive. Now you learn what Biol learned. Love not make weak. Love make strong in different way." As father and child embraced for the first time in years, everyone in the room understood that something fundamental had changed. The war between their species would not end overnight, but it no longer had to be forever. "What happens now?" Ambassador Hyajin asked. Kesseral stood, still keeping one claw on Biol's shoulder. "Now we learn a new way to be strong. We learn what this young one has taught you, that family is not defined by blood alone, but by choice." The war commander looked at Deho. "Human, you have raised my offspring with more wisdom than I possessed. I owe you a debt that can never be repaid." "You don't owe me anything," Deho replied. "Biol is my child now, too. We're all family here." "Family," Kesseral repeated, testing the new concept. "Yes. Perhaps it is time the Vexitar learned about family." And in that moment, the first peace treaty between humans and Vexitar was born. Not in a conference room between diplomats, but in the meeting, between a father who had learned to love and a child who had learned to forgive. 5 years had passed since the day a scared human commander found an abandoned cub floating in space. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Ambassador Lee Deho stood on the observation deck of the New Harmony station looking out at ships from dozens of worlds docked together peacefully. Human vessels floated alongside Vexitar warships that had been converted to exploration craft. The sight still amazed him sometimes. "Hard to believe, isn't it?" came a familiar voice behind him. Deho turned to see Biol approaching. His adoptive child was now fully grown, 8 feet tall with midnight black scales that gleamed like armor. But the eyes were the same kind, intelligent amber that had looked up at him from that wrecked ship so long ago. "What's hard to believe?" Deho asked with a smile. "That 5 years ago, humans and Vexitar were trying to kill each other. Now look." Biol gestured toward the docking bay, where young beings from both species were working together to load supplies onto exploration ships. "The Biol Accords changed everything," Deho said. "You changed everything." "We changed everything," Biol corrected gently. "Together." The Biol Accords, named after the cub who had made them possible, had been signed 3 years ago. They established the first formal peace between the Coalition and the Vexitar Empire, but more importantly, They created a new model for how different species could coexist. The abandoned cub practice had been abolished throughout Vextar space. Instead of casting out young who didn't fit traditional warrior roles, they were now placed in mentorship programs. Many came to human colonies to learn different ways of being strong. Dr. Kim So-ra's research station had become the center for interspecies cooperation studies. Her work with Biol had led to breakthrough discoveries about social development in dozens of species. The little mining station where it all began was now a monument visited by school children from across the galaxy. "How is the new class doing?" Deho asked. "Better than expected," Biol replied with obvious pride. 12 young Vextar, 15 human children working together on their first diplomatic simulation. They argue less than the adults do. Biol now held the official title of Cultural Ambassador, serving as a bridge between the two species. It was perfect work for someone who understood both human emotions and Vextar honor codes. Any problems? Small ones. A few of the Vextar cubs still think they need to prove themselves through combat. And some human children are afraid at first, but they learn. Children always learn faster than adults. As if summoned by their conversation, a group of young beings came running onto the observation deck. Deho recognized several of them, the mixed species class that Biol was mentoring. "Ambassador Biol," called out a human girl named Sarah, "we finished the treaty simulation." "And?" Biol asked with mock seriousness. "We achieved peace in only 3 hours," announced a young Vextar named Threshnall proudly. "Our parents took 3 years. "That's because you're smarter than us," Deho said, making the children giggle. "No," said another Vextar cub named Velandra thoughtfully. "Because we started as friends. Harder to make peace when you start as enemies." The wisdom in the child's words struck both adults. This generation wouldn't have to overcome decades of fear and hatred. They were learning cooperation from the beginning. "Speaking of cooperation," Biol said, "I have news. Kesseral has approved the next phase of the exchange program." Deho raised an eyebrows. The former war commander, now serving as a peaceful contact coordinator, had become one of the strongest advocates for human Vextar cooperation. The change in Biol's birth parent had been remarkable to witness. What's the next phase? Joint exploration missions. Mixed crews heading to unexplored systems. The first ship launches next month. Mixed crews, Deho repeated thoughtfully. Human curiosity and Vextar strength working together. Plus, Biol added with excitement, Yuna will be the human commander of the first mission. Deho felt a surge of pride. Little Yuna, who had been 10 years old when she first met Biol, was now a grown woman and accomplished explorer. She had been the first human to complete Vexitar warrior training, while Biol had been the first Vexitar to earn a human doctorate in diplomacy. "She's nervous," Biol continued. "Keeps asking if I think she's ready." "What do you tell her?" "Same thing you told me when I was scared about my first diplomatic mission. You're ready when you choose to be ready." A chime echoed through the station, calling everyone to the main assembly hall. Today was Memorial Day, a time to remember those lost in the decades of conflict before peace became possible. In the Yotais Assembly Hall, representatives from dozens of worlds gathered together. At the center of the room stood a simple monument inscribed with words in multiple languages. The human text read, "Not all who are abandoned are lost. Not all who are feared are enemies. Sometimes love is the greatest act of rebellion." Kesseral stepped forward to give the opening address. The former war commander had aged in the past 5 years, its scales showing more silver, but its voice remained strong. 5 years ago, my offspring was returned to me by the kindness of strangers. Today, I call those strangers family. We gather not to celebrate the ending of war, but the beginning of understanding. The ceremony continued with speeches from various leaders, but the most moving moment came when the children's choir performed. Human and Vextar voices blended together in a song that Biol had composed, a melody that incorporated the lullabies of both species. As the ceremony concluded, Daeho found himself approached by a familiar figure. Dr. An Sung-ho, the xenopsychologist who had testified at Biol's trial, now served as director of the Interspecies Understanding Institute. Ambassador Daeho, I wanted to thank you again. For what? For proving that the most important scientific discoveries aren't made in laboratories. They're made when someone chooses to see a person instead of a monster. Daeho looked across the room at Biol, who was kneeling down to help a young Vextar cub with its speech for next week's cultural exchange. The scene was so natural now that it was easy to forget how impossible it had once seemed. I didn't discover anything, Daeho said. I just listened to what my heart told me was right. Sometimes that's the most important discovery of all. Later, that evening, Daeho and Biol stood together on the same observation deck where their day had begun. The docking bay was quieter now, but still busy with the constant traffic of a peaceful galaxy. Do you ever regret it? Daeho asked suddenly. Regret what? Leaving your birth species, choosing to stay with humans. Biol considered the question seriously, as it always did with important matters. I didn't leave my birth species, it said, finally. I learned that I belong to more than one species. Human, Vextar, and something new. Something that's both and neither. What's that? Galactic citizen. Someone who belongs everywhere because they choose to make family wherever they go. Biol paused, looking out at the stars. You know what? I do regret sometimes. What? That it took so long for others to learn what you taught me on the first day we met. What was that? That when someone is lost and scared and alone, you don't ask what species they are. You don't ask what they might become. You just ask what they need right now. Daeho smiled, remembering that day in the wrecked ship when he had looked into frightened amber eyes and seen a child in need of help. And what did you need? Same thing everyone needs. To be safe, to be loved, to belong somewhere. They stood, in comfortable silence for a while, watching the peaceful traffic of ships from worlds that had once been enemies. What happens next? Daeho asked. Next, we keep doing what we've been doing, one person at a time, one family at a time, one friendship at a time. We keep proving that different doesn't have to mean enemy. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Biol checked its communicator and smiled. Speaking of friendships, that's from Threshnall, the young Vextar in our program. He wants to know if you'll teach him to cook Korean food for his human roommate's birthday. Daeho laughed. Of course, though I should warn him that my cooking hasn't improved much since you were little. He'll learn. They all learn. That's what children do. They figure out how to be better than their parents. As they prepared to leave the observation deck, Biol stopped and looked back at the stars one more time. You know what the best part is? What? This is just the beginning. Somewhere out there are other species that think they're enemies but could be family. Other children who are scared and alone and need someone to choose love over fear. Biol's eyes shined with the same curiosity and hope that had captivated Daeho from their first meeting. And maybe one day one of our children will find them, and the galaxy will get a little bit bigger and a little bit more like family. Together they walked toward their quarters, leaving the observation deck to its peaceful view of the stars. Behind them, the memorial inscription caught the light from passing ships. Sometimes love is the greatest act of rebellion, but it was no longer a rebellion. Love had become the new normal, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, other abandoned children were waiting to be found by someone brave enough to choose compassion over fear. The galaxy was a big place, with room for many more families. The legacy of one small cub and one caring human had only just begun.